Coming up, a look at the upcoming Iowa City elections. Then, a look at the other elections taking place throughout Iowa.
And a return to the House of Representatives after the battle for a speaker.
All that and a profile on the oldest senator in the country, along with making sure your facts are straight.
Also, where presidents have stopped in Iowa and something for you to consider.
Good evening and welcome to The Update, your home for news and politics.
From the local level to nationwide, we're keeping you up to date. I'm Jordan Tovar.
And I'm Johnny Valtman. And as we always start, we're going to keep it local here in Jordan. Can you catch us up on what's going on in Iowa City?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of election news to share tonight. So Election Day is coming up for cities and schools across the state on November 7th, and here in Iowa City, early voting will be taking place this weekend. The Iowa City Public Library will be the site of early satellite voting for Johnson County. Polls will be open this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday from noon to 5 p.m. Ballots will be available for all precincts, and voters will need to provide a valid ID and proof of residency. In terms of what spots are up for contention in this year's cycle, 4 of 7 Iowa City City Council seats, along with 4 of 7 school board seats, are being voted on November 7th. City Council seats up for grabs include the 2 at-large seats vacated by Laura Burgess, who is running for District A, and Andrew Dunn, who is running for District C. The District A seat had a rare primary for its candidates last month, which featured Tim Borchardt, Laura Burgess, and incumbent Pauline Taylor. Out of this group, Taylor and Burgess were the ones to advance out of the primary to the upcoming election. But District C is seeing a much different story, where Andrew Dunn is running unopposed for the seat vacated by retiring Councilman John Thomas. And the Iowa City Community School Board has 3 incumbents in Lisa Williams, Molly Abraham, and Charlie Eastham running for re-election, with a plethora of candidates gunning for their spots. Well, Johnny, there's been a lot of election news around the city, but I think there's been some election news around the state too.
Yes, Jordan, I've heard, and it's not only just elections here in Iowa City, but there are elections statewide coming up on Tuesday. We're going to send it over to Cara Dulin, who's going to tell us about these elections.
And like Jordan said, we do have an exciting day Tuesday, which is Election Day. There are no statewide measures on the ballot this year, but it looks like Marion and Polk counties have some pretty big decisions to make. In Marion County, people will be voting on whether or not to allow the Pella City Council to change library policies, rules, and regulations. A yes vote will allow them to do this and also grant City Council the ability to make recommendations regarding the purchase of new library materials. And in Polk County, people will be voting on whether or not the county should give $350 million to the Des Moines International Airport for improvements. Votes will vary depending on where you live for things like City Council and school boards. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on November 7th. If you have requested an absentee mail-in ballot, it will only be eligible if it arrives to the county auditor before 8 p.m. on Election Day. And discussions about the Israeli-Hamas conflict are abundant everywhere, and Iowa is no exception. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst slammed President Biden for his handling of the conflict. She demanded that he enforce existing sanctions on Iranian oil and claimed that since he took office, he spent his time, quote, lining the pockets of the Iranian regime with over $80 billion, end quote. Jayce will have more on that conflict later. Right now, I'll send it back to Jordan and Johnny.
Thanks, Cara. And Jordan, while a lot of people will be able to vote on November 7th, there was an election last week to get a new Speaker of the House.
Yeah, Johnny, and since things have been cooling down in Washington, and I'm not talking about the weather, I certainly haven't heard too much about this guy.
Me neither, Jordan, but that's why we have Jayce Bertrand, who is in the newsroom to help explain what's going on in Washington and the rest of the world. Jayce, could you tell us a little bit about our new Speaker of the House?
Well, Johnny, last week we fell a few dozen days short of being the longest period of time without a Speaker of the House when little-known Louisiana Representative Mike Johnson was elected on his first ballot as the compromise candidate. He beat out Republican firebrand Jim Jordan for the nomination after the latter lost 3 different ballots for the position. However, Johnson's election is far from a sign of peace in the House of Representatives. During the 2020 election, Johnson was a key figure in perpetuating the claims that Donald Trump was the true winner of the Electoral College, arguing that mail-in ballots were unconstitutional. His solidly conservative voting record is far from surprising. However, his theorizing that long-dead Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez was put into power with the help of Dominion voting machines is a sign that the overpowering echo that the 2020 election has left behind for the Republican Party. Seeing that the Speaker of the House is crucial in certifying the results of a presidential election, it's anyone's guess as to what Johnson's elections will mean for 2024. However, with the House operating at full speed, that means that the United States is ramping up its involvement in the Israeli-Hamas war. This comes as the Israeli Defense Force has begun its ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. The United Nations condemned the invasion, urging Israel to work towards a ceasefire in the region. Israel has refused all urgings for an immediate ceasefire, and they are emboldened by the United States, who voted against the UN condemnation. International debate continues to explode over the conflict.
Council members, when my grandfather Chaim and his children were sent to Auschwitz, the world stayed silent. Some of you have forgotten why this body was established. We will wear this star until you condemn the atrocities of Hamas and demand the immediate release of our hostages.
The United Nations was not created in order to bring us to heaven, but to save us from hell. Gaza is now hell on earth. Saving humanity from hell today means for the United Nations to save Palestinians in Gaza.
People from all over the country, including here in Iowa City, are calling on the government to force an immediate ceasefire in the conflict. But until then, I'll continue to follow this ongoing story. I'll send it back to Johnny and Jordan in the studio.
Thanks, Jayce. Johnny, last week we talked about Joni Ernst, and we love talking about our candidates in twos. So this week you've got the other senator representing Iowa.
Yes, Jordan, I do. And we are talking about the oldest living senator still working in Washington, D.C. today. Iowa Senator Charles E. Grassley is 90 years old and is still serving Iowa. Grassley is now the longest serving senator after the death of Dianne Feinstein, as he's been in his position since 1980. That's 43 years in D.C. He was born on a farm in Butler County, Iowa, back in 1933. He studied political science at the University of Northern Iowa and earned his master's degree. His political career began in 1958, becoming an Iowa House representative. He would serve that position all the way up until 1975. Moving up, he would then begin his career in D.C., serving for the 3rd District of Iowa. Then in 1980, now to 2023, Grassley has served as a senator. In his elections, he has received 60% or more of votes in 6 of the 8 elections, including a mammoth 70.18% in the 2004 race. Grassley in D.C. has taken on many fights, one being an antitrust act aimed at big tech companies in 2022. He's been at ends with the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as EPA, as he fights them from his experience as a farmer. Grassley also was a co-sponsor of a bill in 2019 to help with retirement planning. Grassley has been firm on many key issues facing the country. He is against stricter gun laws, abortion, gay marriage, and the legalization of marijuana. Grassley is known for his campaigns in which every election year he makes sure to stop in every 99 Iowa counties, so every 6 years you may see Grassley in your county. And we're switching things up this week. Jordan, you're going to be taking on Fact Check. What do you got for us?
Yeah, Johnny, there's always a lot of false information being peddled around, so it's important to keep people informed. With the rise of AI, a situation arose in Slovakia days before its election. A deepfake audio of Michael Semeka and a newspaper reporter talking about rigging the election. Semeka immediately declared that it was not him, and fact-checkers also proved that it wasn't him. Something everybody should be doing is double-checking sources with elections coming up. COVID-19 vaccines have always been a hot-button issue within the nation, and false information about them have been peddled and debunked constantly. Recently, a myth that said vaccines could alter DNA and cause cancer. A spokesperson from the European Union's medical product regulator, the European Medical Agency, has come out and said that they've found no evidence of this happening at all. Reports have said that 500 Americans are being held hostage in Gaza. This isn't true. While some are being held hostage, most are simply stuck in the region due to the Israeli air blockade taking place in the region currently. And while that could cause some confusion that they're hostages, that's really the main reason why they're stuck there. And you know, Johnny, with fake news being passed around every day, and especially with this presidential election coming up, fake news is more prevalent than ever.
Yes, and I feel these presidential candidates, they've been receiving it on both sides, and they're really hoping that it can maybe scale back. But in Iowa, it doesn't seem like a lot of fake news comes out of here, and we're going to send it out to Cara again, and she's going to tell us where the presidents have been in Iowa recently.
Thanks, Johnny. The most recent Republican poll results are in, and they show that Donald Trump is dominating in Iowa. The poll, which is conducted by NBC News and the Des Moines Register, found that Trump now leads his rivals by 27 points, despite his recent legal troubles. In fact, 2/3 of likely GOP caucus goers say they don't think his legal challenges are severe. Trump has increased his lead since the last poll, which was conducted in August. 43% of Republican caucus goers say he's their first choice for president, with 2/3 of those saying their mind is made up on that vote. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley has moved up to tie for second place with Ron DeSantis, with each earning 16% of likely caucus goers, who say they'd be their first choice. This is a 10-point jump for Haley and a 3-point loss for DeSantis since the last poll. However, DeSantis does have more voters than Haley, saying he'd be their second choice. And in spite of Trump's commanding lead, his opponents still seem confident, with DeSantis maintaining that Trump's lead can mostly be attributed to name recognition.
He's the most famous person running, 100% name ID. He's the person people know.
And for his own part, Trump doesn't seem to feel particularly threatened by DeSantis.
He's like a wounded bird falling from the sky. Oh, there he is. It's Ron DeSanctimonious. He's falling beautifully from the sky. It's a beautiful thing to watch because I got him elected.
It's no secret that Trump's backers are some of the most vocal and supportive compared to other GOP candidates. But it'll be interesting to see how the caucus plays out as Trump's legal troubles continue. Jordan and Johnny, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Kara. And Jordan, I didn't really have anything for the audience to consider this week because exams, they've been weighing in on my mind.
Yeah, Johnny, these exams have been absolutely beating the brakes off me, and it's been hard to keep focused on the news.
It has, but that's why Jayce wasn't able to give us a fact check earlier. Jordan took that over, but that's because he came up with something he would like you guys to consider.
Thanks, Johnny. And in celebration of Halloween, I'd like to talk about something scary. And what's scarier than political parties? These last few weeks, we've seen the cracks of the Republican Party begin to form as the further right Freedom Caucus has begun to butt heads with the more moderate old guard of the Republican Party. However, what if I were to tell you that the Democrats also showed their hands this week? While the Republicans went back and forth over their speaker nominees, the Democrats showed how absolutely detached from their voter base that they are. The Democrats have been able to stay in power for the last 3 decades by appealing to a younger, more liberal audience. But their handling of the Israeli-Hamas war made it clear to all their voters that they don't always have their best interest in mind. So what now? I doubt the Republicans will be able to swing a majority of the youth vote to their side in 2024, but with RFK Jr. now running as an independent, we may see a repeat of the 1912 election, where the more liberal party splintered in two and fought over votes, allowing the Conservative Party to just barely sneak in a win, just as the world teeters on the edge of all-out war. And I'm not sure if history can ever truly repeat itself, but it's very interesting to see how trends repeat decades, maybe even centuries later. I'll let you guys consider that, but for now I'm sending it back to Johnny and Jordan in the studio.
Thank you, Jayce, and thank you for tuning in to the update tonight, where you'll find all your news and politics.
From the local level to nationwide, we're keeping you up to date. I'm Jordan Tovar.
And I'm Johnny Valtman. Have a great night.